Good morning, everybody. This is John with Adventures in Wrenching, and we are going to be continuing our journey with Project YJ. 1989 Jeep YJ that we have previous videos on. And what I'm going to be tackling on this is something that I have been dreading for a while and putting off because this is going to be a major issue. But if you follow me down here, the exhaust system on this, and I'll fire it up here in a minute and you will hear it, was cobbled together. The engine that's in this is out of a 96 Grand Cherokee, so it is much newer. It is the fuel injected version, definitely better than what was in it, but you can see by all the welds and everything, you've got a weld here, weld there, welds obviously back this way. And in my adventures, I have pretty much beat the tar out of my exhaust system. Catalytic converter is up in there. It's all welded one solid piece that I can tell. I can't see a way to get it out other than taking my skid plate off, which holds my transmission. So none of this is good. But the biggest thing, you can see that I bent the tailpipe. That wasn't set up right. Over looks good, but I can see a weld back in there. But also, the most common thing that happens to these is the exhaust manifold is cracked. And I'll open the hood up and show you. Hard to see, but if you look right down in there, you can see where the weld has been. These have a tendency to crack. The downside to this little project is that I have to pull everything out of here. The air box, I'm going to have to move the power steering. I'm going to have to take off the wiring to the injectors. I'm going to have to pull the intake and the exhaust manifolds, much of which is not very easy to get to, just to get this intake manifold off. And it is loud, so loud in fact, as you will hear, that when I pull up to a fast food, well, I won't name any so that I keep myself out of trouble, but let's just say a drive-through at a fast food, I have to shut it off because they can't hear me, and that is annoying. And if I was still 16, maybe I might like that, but you can hear how loud that is, and it is not supposed to be that loud. When you go to the other side, it is just as bad. So hang in there with me. This video is going to probably take a little while to accomplish, although I'm going to try to keep the actual footage down as we try to tackle this. So strap in and let's get going. I do have my umbrella up. It is the end of March, so you wouldn't think that would be too bad, but this is Arizona. So I'm going to be 80s in the shade, which means in the direct sun, quite a bit warmer than that. So still best time to do this, but I don't feel like cooking. So I will show where I'm going to unbolt stuff usually, because I'm not going to do this with a tripod. Maybe I should, but I'm probably not. And I'll show you as I get along. Now I will show that I don't have a fancy setup, at least not anymore. My garage actually was turned into a game room before my wife passed away, so I don't have that anymore. So this is my working shed. I have another area. This is about a third of what I've got, but to do all the work that we do, I mean, I've got a 400 square foot concrete pad. I've got an umbrella. I've got lots of tools. grinders off in my other area. I've got, you know, presses. So an average industrious guy or girl with an average shop, this can all be done here. I just kind of wanted to show that average person with average skills and an average shop, you can do a lot. I got a welder down on the bottom of this, and that's what we're going to be using on this exhaust. I got a wire feed. Has nothing to do with the project. It just kind of shows you the environment that I'm working with as I'm cleaning out my other sheds, as you can tell, so that I can make more room for more tools and my other projects along the way that will get some video time later, my 55 Nash and the 50 GMC. And of course project 944, which is my Porsche, which is underneath the cover, that the shop lied to the previous owner and said that he had the major service done, which it didn't. So it threw a timing belt, which it is a interference motor. That means that the valves in number 2 slapped against the pistons, and now it has no compression. So head's going to have to come off of that. That'll be a different video. So let's move on with this one. One thing I might point out as I have moved my way along a little bit, I've got the top of the air box off. Keep as many things together as you possibly can. Like, I just rotated this around so that it's all together. Check things as you go. My air filter is really clean, but I try to, I won't say really clean, but it is still in good shape. So I won't be replacing it on this adventure. But the better that you can keep everything together. Like, I kept the top of my airbox all together. I kept the rod over here. Then the easier it's going to be to put all back together later on when that time comes. Now this is pretty straightforward on this, because all you really need to do is, and I'll need a pair of pliers, and I'll pull this out of the way and we'll pull the bracket out. But you're just going to be disconnecting everything. All these clips, connectors, and that broke, but that's common also. I'll just use silicone seal to put that back in place. These are all one-way connectors, which means that each object has its own separate fitting, so it can only go back together one way. And we'll pull all those wires out of the way in a little bit. Alright, back to using both hands. Now the other thing I'll point out is just look for things that don't seem right as you go. And I found out a little bit ago that this just basically pulled out with no effort at all, so that might have had actually a vacuum leak. And since this is a later model transplant into an earlier Jeep, this is all going to the original canister, which is down here. So there's some modifications, but it might not have been holding pressure, and when it is due for emissions again, February of next year, so I got about a year to go, it might have failed because the tank would not have pressurized. So I'll be using a little silicone or something on that to make sure that that works the way that it's supposed to. So this gives you opportunity to find different things going on with your vehicle as you go and fix them. And believe me, if you take on a project like this, you're going to find lots of stuff that you didn't know was broken. Now the airbox is only held on with grommets on the bottom here and these latches. And one thing that I found on this one, and this brings up the next thing that I was going to bring up. There's going to be things that you run into that you're going to have to make a decision whether you want to repair or not worry about. This one, they created a wire, basically out of coat hanger it looks like, to hold this one latch here on this back side. So the box itself is in good condition. It looks like these just notch up there. So I have to make a decision, and I'll look on eBay a little bit later. Do I want to just use what they used to make it work, or do I want to make it right and see if I can find one on eBay or go out to a wrecking yard someplace and actually make it right. Since this is a modification, it does not have the down spot because it basically almost rests right up here, and it would go from a round hole to a square hole, so this is not exactly the right box for this. I believe this box actually came out of the Grand Cherokee that the donor motor came out of. So did the computer, so I mean they did a complete swap. And Grand Cherokee motors and inexpensive Grand Cherokees are way easier to find than late model Wranglers that people want to part with that also have the 4.0 and all of these goodies. So we'll just fabricate. So have to make a decision on that. Okay, fuel rails. You notice that these are different sizes, and they only go on one way. So some people would like to mark them. I don't really have to because, again, they only go on one way. But they do not come off that easy, and you can't... It would look like you actually pinch this and pull it off, but that works against you. What you really need, and I have this set, is just a cheap set of line tools here. And I'll basically show you how this is going to work. You press it over the line, you press it all the way in, you'll feel it pop, and then it comes off. Now the other side is a different size, should be the next one up. Alright, video to continue in a minute. Okay, it does work, but there was still a little bit of fuel pressure, so go ahead and soak that up, and then you're not going to have to worry about that anymore. And there is my line right there, and there was the tool that I used. It does take a little effort sometimes, especially if they've been on there a while, but worked just fine. Like I said, you can pick these up at inexpensive tool discounters, or you can get more expensive brass versions of this, but I don't use them very much. They sit in my shop. You can tell these actually sat in the sun for a while on one side, but well worth it. Okay, the next item I'm going to work on is the accelerator cable and kick down cable brackets. Get those out of the way. It's 3 bolts, one here, and one back here, and then also pull the fuel line off the bottom here. You can see the bolt right there along with the bracket. So we'll get all this off, and then we'll move on to the next step. The other thing, just as a recommendation, is have a magnet with you because you are going to drop things. I did drop my socket. I had to go fishing it out. It went down into the manifold area. Couldn't reach down there with my fat fingers, but I did. Was able to fish it out with the magnet really quick. So that's going to be very helpful. The other thing, and these are 3 of the bracket bolts. You got a couple of ways you can do this. I've got the bracket up there. You could actually drop the holes or the screws back in the hole like this, which is what I'm going to do, at least in this case. So you know exactly where they go, and so you don't lose them. Or if I go back to how we did it back in the custom car building days, I would use Ziploc baggies and I would bag everything. There it is, right down there. But since this whole manifold assembly's got to come off together, now these are plastic, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a Sharpie and I'm going to mark these as I pull them off. These have had tape on them before, but the tape is old. But you're going to want to pull your injectors off, and then this top rail just slides off. So we're going to work on that probably next, along with some more vacuum lines, because I got one more here. And then this really, I'm going to have to go the other way with this bracket, or pull those lines out, because this comes right across the manifold. So I need this one to come this way and need the other one to stay over on that side. The other thing you're going to run into, and you can see it right here, is that your rubber is going to be old and brittle. So plan on pretty much getting all new hose as you start. So this one snapped off at the nipple. I'm going to need some more hose, but I'll snip this off, get this wire out of the way, because I believe that was to the AC, which I don't have anyway, and I'm going to rewire it with a vintage air unit at some future date. But for the moment, all that's going to have to come out. So this is going to swing around that way, and I know I'm going to have to go down and get at least a small section of replacement hose. The other thing to consider is get a can of air or a wet rag, because you can already see that stuff is starting to get down into the throttle body itself, and you don't want that going down in your motor. So I'll clean all that up with probably a Q-tip and some rags, and then you're going to see a paper towel stuff down in there in a moment. Okay, to show I'm doing what I said I was going to do, squirt a little dab of WD-40 in there. That's not going to hurt anything. Here's my Q-tip. Get as much of that junk out of there as possible. Clean it up some with a clean rag. So that's all nice and clean in there. And then crumple up a paper towel, and that'll keep most of the junk out of the throttle body. Just make sure that you pull that back out before the end of your work. Now, some people are opposed to actually writing on their parts because they want a nice clean look. Me, on this particular project, I don't care. And I would have to pull the tape off anyway, but what I'm going to do with every one of them is, as I pull them off, and you can see on these, because they're easy to get to, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to do 4, 5, 6. That way, when I pull these, since all these connectors are identical, and most people think that the wires will stay how they're supposed to be, just as a precaution, I'm numbering them. That way it goes really quick when I drop this rail back on and just want to hook my connectors back up for the injectors, because the injectors are going to actually stay in place as I pull the intake and the exhaust manifold. Okay, almost everything is cleared off the top now, and peeled back. Our next step is going to be to tackle the power steering pump, which is attached to the front of your intake manifold. So that is a matter of 3 bolts, one of which is difficult to get to. So we're going to, these 2 bolts, this is your adjusting bolt that adjusts your belt, and then there's a further bolt down further here that we need to get to. We're going to peel it all off and lean it forward so that everything is clear. And I still haven't taken this bracket off yet, but I'm going to shortly. Now, I cannot speak for every power steering pulley on Jeeps. However, this one does have holes that you can line up with on the bolts. And that is the way to do it, because these bolts are not coming out unless you line up a hole to do that. So you're going to need to go ahead, and my recommendation is to loosen them so that it is actually easier for you to rotate this pulley system. Or what you can do is you wind up loosening it, adjusting, take the belt off. That way this spins freely, and you can use those holes to get to these 3 other bolts. But that's the only way you're going to do this, unless you loosen each one up slowly and pull the whole thing off together. And that's just not the way to do it. That's no fun. For reference, a 13mm deep socket will actually fit inside there and reach it. Having an extension with a swivel is going to be pretty necessary on this, not only just for this bolt,
but your bolts underneath, when you're reaching underneath here to try to loosen these, I think there's 11 total bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the bottom. So it's going to be very difficult to get to some of these without that swivel. So definitely make sure that you have that available. This particular motor, version of the motor, on this pulley, you need to loosen this bolt, which I've already done. You can see that I've moved it. But this is attached to your adjusting bolt up here. And if this is still locked in place, you cannot adjust this bolt and have it loosen your belt. And now that this is that way, you can see this moving. This is going to loosen up, the belt's going to loosen, and you can pull this belt off. Which I actually should be getting pretty close now to being able to use a screwdriver and just pop this belt off. This was a tight fit. This motor did have air conditioning. They also make a bracket for it without air conditioning. You can still see the platform for the AC. But like I said, it had a big under dash unit that took up a crap load of room, so I'm going to be fabbing up something a little bit better using vintage air equipment or some other brand, and stuff that is more appropriate in size to what a Wrangler is, since it doesn't have a lot of room. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and work this belt off. Now you will notice I did not have to take this pulley bracket off because it's not really in the way now, and I just pulled the power steering pump straight off of its little slider here. I reverse these bolts in so that we know where they go, and it is neatly tucked out of the way. So now I get to work on that bracket right there. Okay, now's when all the swearing starts. And since this is a family channel, I will edit all of that out, should I do that. The reason is because I'm going to show you what I can't see myself, which is down underneath here, and what are blind bolts for me, because I can't see any of these bolts that I'm going to have to get a socket onto. I mean, I can see one right there, but all these lower bolts I can't see. So this is the part that I've been dreading. Okay, I'm almost proud of myself. I don't think I swore once. These are the lower bolts. Now you notice that I did lay them out in the order that they came out of the motor, front to back. They are all the same length, and I don't think it's a real issue as far as that goes. But at least they all came off. A couple of them were actually almost finger loose. That concerns me a little bit, because that might have been a exhaust leak in its own right. So that only leaves the top 5. So I'm going to start wrenching on those. But the bottom ones are out. Okay, I'm down to the last bolt right here, and you can see how this just will come off. So you always want to just leave one bolt in just for a little bit. I'll set this right here. You hold it up, it is an aluminum manifold, so it's not that heavy, but you still don't want it to fall because it's not as sturdy as a cast iron. You just set this last bolt down someplace, and this thing should, in theory, pop right off. And there you have it. Okay, intake manifold is off complete. We'll do a little inspection of this while we're at it. Doesn't look too bad. You can see the fuel draining out of the rail. That'll all fill back up when I repressurize it. Then you get this side, and the hard part is going to be getting these bolts off, most likely. I may actually grind those off, but you can see the weld repair that's right there. That actually I did what I could with it still in there, which is difficult and definitely not a pretty weld, but it took care of it temporarily, and we'll go from there, because I have a different intake manifold or exhaust manifold, and I'll show you how much better that one is and why as soon as I figure out how I'm going to get these off. Okay, for the next part, I decided that it would be best if I just grind this off. So make sure you wear gloves, wear goggles, obviously. Make sure that all the gas is cleaned up. And as you can see, it's not as easy as it looks either. So, and you can see that the other one's even still stuck in there. So I'm going to get the camera out of the way, and we're going to do the other one. Well, this is actually in pretty decent shape. I don't see any big signs of carbon buildup. That's good. The freeze plugs are in decent shape. That's good. If you've got any question about your freeze plugs, now would be an excellent time to replace those, because you can actually get to these right now. But I don't look like I have to do that. So I'm going to get some paper towels, put it in there, and then I'm going to wire wheel this area to get it nice and smooth. And we'll carry on. Now I'm going to go show you the difference between the two manifolds and what makes a difference here. Okay, so this is my old manifold. And when you look to this side, especially right here, you can still see the remnants of the crack that was in the manifold. And even though the weld is crappy, all of that was cracked before. And that is a common problem with these. Some of them are even worse than that. The replacement manifold, and this is a later design, had expansion corrugated expansion areas on it to help this be able to flex, and therefore no problem at the collectors. So I'm going to have to get these bolts out, because I'm going to go ahead and use new bolts to put the flange on. This is actually in good shape, so I'll keep that. But also I'm going to wire wheel this to make it all nice and smooth so we can put the new gasket on it. The gasket that was on it was metallized. I believe the one that I just got from Felpro is more of a paper gasket. And I do have copper seal, which is exhaust for like headers and exhaust. And I'm going to put a thin bead on both sides, so this will seal up nice and tight. I only want to do this one time. Okay, all done. Show you what I use. I actually like to use a paint stripping wheel instead of a wire brush, because that gives me a nice clean surface. And then I cleaned out this with a small brush. Cleaned all this off with a small brush. So there's nothing down in the ports now, and everything's ready to go. Now I'll go show you the manifold side of this. Okay, I've elected to make this look a little better and protect it a little better. I've used VHT, very high temperature. It's header paint, almost like a ceramic coating. This is good up to 1200 degrees. So I got it completely coated. Not only does it make it look a little better, but it does protect it from the rust and hopefully prevent it from having any weakening, any issues, stuff like that, to even give it just a hint of protection against the elements, so that I don't have to worry about that cracking, which hopefully because of these I won't have to. Okay, again, this is all probably overkill. Here's the new gasket. But since this is all about leaks, I probably don't have to, but I'm actually putting copper seal, which is good to 700 degrees. It's for headers. I'm going to be putting a thin layer around each port, and putting it on there, and this is going to be double-sided because this is all about the leaks, and I'll be honest, I do not want it to leak ever again. So I will continue with this with the off camera and then get it on there. Okay, inside layer complete. I'm going to go ahead and get this put on there, and then we'll work on the outside layer. Now I will give credit to another YouTuber, YouTube creator who I saw, who showed me, well, not me, but posted on his YouTube channel, a shortcut, which is putting all these lower bolts in, just a couple of threads, keeping these washers out, and then and that's going to be with the header on, so I'll remove that. But once you get these on and leave them out like that, you can drop the intake manifold on and not have to try to hunt for these holes without being able to see them. So great idea, and I'm going to do it. Okay, there you have layer number 2. So what I'll do is, once I get this on there, I'll bolt at least with a little bit of torque, put these 2 end bolts on there so it holds it all in place fairly tight, and then I should be able to get the rest of those lower bolts on there, and then we'll work on the intake manifold. Okay, so I did wire wheel all my bolts and washers as well. Not only does it make it look better, which that isn't the main reason. The main reason is that with all of the threads clean, it goes into the holes nice and smooth, nice and easy. So those lower ones are in place, all of the washers are into the outside position. So once I clean up the intake manifold a little bit, I should be able to drop that right in place, get a couple bolts in the top, and then we're ready to actually tighten that all up. Okay, I did spray off the intake a little bit, but most of my effort was spent on cleaning the mating surface. I'm a firm believer that you clean to the level of the vehicle that you're using and its purpose. This vehicle spends most of its life off-road, going through mud and sand and dirt and everything else. So this intake, I could have cleaned it up and everything, and it would be just as dirty within the next few months with more caked on dirt. So the key is making sure that it actually runs well and the mating surfaces are clean. Okay, I will point out I do actually have the manual for this, so I don't just wing everything. But on this particular vehicle, it does have torque specs and a tightening sequence on the intake and exhaust manifold, and just like the heads, usually you go from the inside out. You can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it basically starts in the middle, works its way out, and then it is 6 and 7 have less torque. They are at 17 pounds, but all the rest are at 24 pounds. And usually I would do it in 2 increments. So I'll be doing it at about 10 pounds and then 24 pounds. So that is where we're at. It's on. So I'm going to break out my torque wrench, and I'll get this all tightened up, and then we'll start putting it all back together again. I would like to point out that a lot of these, or at least most of these, have a belt routing diagram, but if your vehicle does not, then either online you can get it or your manual. You want it to have a little bit of flex, but not a lot, and that's about where it needs to be. Obviously, if it squeals, I can either tighten or loosen after I get the vehicle running, but it's in good shape right now. And my pulley is, bolt is tight, it's all locked in place. As I pointed out earlier, these are one-sided, and going back on is really simple because they just clip on. It's on, it's on. So I can go ahead and I'll go ahead and leave that in there for the moment, and then we'll start hooking all this back together. It's all pretty good about going back into the same direction that it came. Got the bracket back on, got the two cables hooked back up. This was zip tied, so I'll be getting some zip ties and re-zip tying that back down. This hose I'm going to replace. And one thing I'll point out, these hard lines get brittle, so you're better off actually taking like a knife and slicing this off than trying to work this old plastic off, because over time these will break and these become harder to get a hold of. So if you want to keep your hard lines, cut them off with a knife and don't try to twist them off or it'll snap. So we're getting there. Keep plugging away at putting all this together. Okay, the sun is getting ready to go down. It has been a full day, but I did get the manifold on. Everything looks like it's in. I've got the one vacuum line I'm going to have to replace, which I will go to the store tomorrow or later tonight. I have this connector goes down to my O2 sensor, which is obviously disconnected because I don't have the exhaust pipe hooked up. None of that would prevent it from starting. So I just turned the key on. I do not see any fuel leaks. And we're going to prepare for a very noisy experience. Okay, it starts. And we're going to leave it at that, because tomorrow I have to make a decision on this exhaust system. And here's why. One solid piece, front to back. And even though the welds are ugly, I know they are leaking in some spots. Like right here, I can see evidence. Over here, but if I clean these up, I have a different muffler that I can put on it. That one doesn't look horribly beat. I'm just wondering if I should just drop this skid plate, jack up the transmission, make sure that it stays where it is, remove the whole exhaust system and decide what I want to replace. Because last year, well, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, it passed emissions with flying colors. So apparently the catalytic converter is working on this. Now, it helps that the numbers on this Jeep when it goes to emissions are for an 89 with a carbureted motor, and this one being a fuel injected 4-liter HO out of a 96 gets great emissions compared to the carbureted version. So that helps, but even so, it had really good emissions. So that's going to be tomorrow's deal. So we're going to start this over again tomorrow. Morning. It is day 2 of working on the YJ exhaust system, and I have a decision to make. Do I pull the exhaust system out complete? I mean, it's still in one piece. Like I pointed out a little bit earlier, it's got some holes here, probably some holes further down. Or do I saw it and make another weld and just pull it out in 2 pieces? My end desire, now that I've replaced the exhaust manifold on this, is to actually replace most of this pipe, I think. But that's not going to be particularly cheap, since if I get the right stuff, I'm going to have to get a head pipe, another catalytic converter, another muffler, another tailpipe, drop it down, hangers. A couple $100 worth of stuff that doesn't really fit into my budget right this moment, and I'm going to have to source some of it anyway, because as I said, this is a newer drivetrain in an older vehicle, and I'll probably have to mock up some stuff to do this. So I'm thinking lift it, pull everything out, and then find what holes I can, weld up the holes, clean it all up, and put this system back in, and then we'll do... Okay, I have a decision to make. Do I do this exhaust system in one piece, since it seems to be all welded together, and pull it out, clean this one up,
or hack it in half and pull it out in 2 pieces. I'm thinking 1 piece because my plan is to eventually replace all of this with new pipe, but that doesn't fit into the budget, and it's going to have to be mocked up anyway. Newer drivetrain, older Jeep. It may use original parts, and it may not. So I do know I need a couple of things. I need that one hose that we talked about yesterday, and I also need some bolts for the exhaust manifold. So I think I'm going to go get those and ponder this a little more. And then by the time I get back, we'll make a decision. Because to pull it out in 1 piece, I'm going to have to pull this tire, probably drop a shock, so that I can get it all out together. I know it's over by the tank. I mean, it's possible. I guess I could rotate it, but yeah, none of this is going to be fun or easy. All right, let's get to it. Well, the center skid plate is off, and I definitely am going to have to do some cleaning on this, but you can also see I have done some off-roading. Those are big rocks, but I've got rubber washer pads down in here. I've got a lock washer, and that is the bottom part of my transmission mount, so I'm going to have to definitely get a transmission mount before I put this in. So like I said earlier, it's always the things that you find when you're fixing something else. So this I got to clean up a little bit. Like I said, definitely not show quality, but I don't need to be keeping all that dirt. I've probably got 20-30 pounds worth just of road debris, off-road debris in this center pan. So we'll clean that off, but I need to work on getting the exhaust out right now. Well, I just discovered, I hadn't even noticed it, but somewhere along the trail at some point I lost the base of my farm jack because I was going to lift up the back of it. Well, that's interesting. Wow, who would have thought? Certainly not I. Alright, well, it's not like I'm going to get just a base, so that's going to go to the scrap pile. Crap. Okay, I got the exhaust out. It was all 1 piece, but this snapped off. It wasn't hardly welded on at all. None of this is any good. I do have a new muffler already, but I think I'm going to just go and see what I can do to order all of this stuff in and just do it all at one time and not go through this again. So the Jeep's going to be down for a few days. Problems. I should say I have a newer muffler. It hasn't been used on a project, it's just been sitting around. It is slightly bigger can, but that's not going to hurt anything. I can adjust, as you can see, the welds and everything. But the inlet and outlet are in the same spot and in the same size. So I think it's time to just order everything. New upstream and downstream O2 sensors, new catalytic converter, new pipes. Just do it. Good morning. It's a week later. I had to wait around for this. All my parts are here. And it lays out really nice. So it looks like everything is going to line up perfectly, since the old system was still in there. So I'm not going to have to fab up much at all. I'm just going to have to go ahead and weld it up, and I'm going to break out my welder and we'll get started on this. I do not consider myself a Class A welder by any stretch of the imagination. I've got some of the weld already started, as you can see. I will grind this all down and pretty it up before we install it, and I'll show you the final product. Okay, well, it's in, at least so far. I haven't started it up yet to see how it sounds, because I got a couple of adjustments I got to make. This bracket is resting right against the transmission pan, so I'm going to go ahead and bend that out a little bit. And I have to get the skid plate back on, which I've got soaking in purple power right now, because I got to go ahead and scrape all that off and put the new transmission mount, which you can see is bad, which I do have the replacement, so we're going to do that next. I know it's only been a couple of minutes video time for you guys,
but it's been more than a week for me. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape all this off, clean it up a little bit at least to get the rocks out of it, and then I'll get this bolted back in place after I adjust that exhaust out a little bit away from the transmission pan. Well, this is what the transmission mount is supposed to look like, all in one piece. And that is what I was left with in there. So the transmission was just flopping around. Motor mount seemed to be good, but I couldn't put the skid plate in with this being the way it is anyway, so we're going to go clean that up a little bit underneath there. A little cleaner. This is where it goes. Got 2 bolts that hold it all in place. And then it goes up like that. Then I got another one that was a couple rubber grommets that actually go into it that weren't holding it either, so I'm going to go get some bigger washers for that. We're going to make all this work. Make it better. Okay, a few more days have passed, and we should be able to get this all done. I had a couple of call-ins to work, so I couldn't really work on the Project YJ. Got an isolator that we're going to put on, and go put the hose to nowhere, which is what I've called it, because there's this long hose that's, should be able to see it under there. It wasn't hanging down quite that far, but it actually turns out that that is a vent hose that goes to the top of the transfer case and then was tied off up higher up with a little check valve so that it could breathe and not get water in it. But that came off a long time ago. It's just been dangling around for a while, and now we're going to get that back up there. And then it should be ready to go out on the road. All new exhaust, and we're good to go. Well, you can see that I've got it, had to jack up the exhaust system a little bit, and that isolator, this whole exhaust system is forward a little bit. But I'm not going to worry about it all that much. We'll be able to still get that on there and drop that back down. I think I will. Either hammer this up or down a little bit to get that out of the way, or I can actually probably bend, hammer these tangs back a little bit so that and that's probably the direction I'll go. Let me go work on this a little bit. I want it to hang straight down, or at least not run into this. Then I'll have to get a second isolator or hanging rubber. All right, let me get a hammer. Okay, so I bent them forward. I got it up there. It's not touching. And the key to actually getting this on is using a little bit of transmission fluid or oil or grease or something, wax, whatever you need to use to lubricate that rubber to get it over the grommet, because those, as you can see on this side, has that flare on it, and that's to keep this isolator in place. So we're going to drop this down and see how it hangs. There is room for another one on the other side. I just only bought one of these because I only thought there was one, not two. But it's okay. The other one will be easy enough to do the exact same thing. So this should make it nice and stable. Okay, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see because I don't have a lot of room up here. But right up here, where my finger's at, yeah, you can see it a little bit. I can see it on my camera. This right here is where my hose to nowhere goes. That is a serrated little nipple that comes out the side, which is a vent tube. And this hose right here, I'm going to clean it up some, and then I'm going to shorten it up and get it back on there, and then reroute it back up high, up underneath the engine compartment where it won't get wet. Okay, I got the hose to nowhere all secure, zip tied in place.
Everything is ready. Moment of truth. Much quieter. If you remember back at the beginning of the video how noisy this was. So, no leaks up here. Seems to be all coming out of the exhaust back here. Don't hear any noises underneath, except for the trash truck behind me. Sweet. All right, we're gonna have to go get take this for a test drive in a little bit. Got to get everything cleared out of the way, get me cleaned up, because as you can see, I got to be quite the mess. So while I'm under here, I'm going to top off my fuel fluids, make sure that everything's okay, and we'll go take a little test run. But I think we are in fine shape. Way better than we were. Well, in summary, other than my test drive here, I did replace the exhaust system front to back, had to fab most of that up, weld it all in place. I found a broken transmission mount along the way, fixed that, so that's all replaced. Fixed my hose to nowhere. So I got a little bit further along than I thought I would. Only because I found stuff that was broken that shouldn't have been broken in the first place, I don't think. Alright. So I'll meet you on the inside after I get cleaned up a little bit. Well, thanks for coming along this little repair adventure. It took me way longer than I anticipated it to, mainly because of my other job calling me in to work, but it is done. Now, I might get a little bonus out of this, and follow me while I'm talking about it, and that is that I might get a little better gas mileage. Now, the exhaust really doesn't help all that much, except that this is a newer drivetrain, which means that it's fuel injected, has O2 sensors, computer, and all of that. That also means that if the system is getting more air because holes are in the exhaust, the computer compensates by adding more fuel to keep it to the 14:1 optimum air-fuel ratio mixture. More air means more fuel. More fuel means worse for fuel economy. So now that I've got all the holes sealed up, the O2 sensors might read it right, and I may, in theory, get a little better gas mileage. Jeeps were not known to get that good of gas mileage anyway. Out on the highway I got about 16, but I would always like to get a little better. Anyway, again, thanks for coming along. If you enjoyed, were entertained, found anything useful in this, please like, subscribe, follow me on Facebook and Adventures in Wrenching, and follow me here on YouTube. And I'll see you on the next adventure. Bye now.